Welcome back to the final day of the training on building Microsoft Teams apps and solutions. As a reminder, you can post your questions in the Q&A panel during the live session, and our team will answer your questions there. Yesterday, we covered building Teams apps using solution accelerators. Today, we will cover Teams App Lifecycle Management. Now let's move on to our topic on Teams App Lifecycle Management, where we'll be covering the following: packaging, deployment, and policies.
Hi, I'm Joey.
Hi, I'm Rajesh.
And we're going to talk today about App Lifecycle and Microsoft Teams. And so what we mean by App Lifecycle is really the tools and processes in place once you have an app to get the app from the hands of a developer, to get it packaged, to get that packaged app in the hands of an IT decision maker so that they can go through validation process for an individual organization. And then how that app flows for the IT pro to upload and approve. And what Rajesh will talk about near the end are the tools you have once you have the app uploaded into your production environment, tools you have to manage the configuration and permission control on that app. And then finally, the end of the life cycle, how do users discover and use these apps? So everything that we're going to talk about applies to first-party apps, third-party apps, and line of business apps. I'll call out specificities when there's something that just specifically applies to a line of business app, and it should be evident as we go through. But this is, in general, what we consider the app life cycle. So let's talk about in Teams how you can control how this works. So I'm going to start with the developer. There are going to be other resources and videos available for how to actually do Teams development, how to create a tab, a bot, a message extension, and so on. We're really starting with, okay, you've created your app, you have this thing ready to go. How do you actually package this thing so that you can submit it into a production environment? So to package an app in Teams, we have an app that does this process called App Studio. So you can find this app like any other app in Teams in the App Store. If you search for App Studio, you'll see it pop up here. And it's really a developer tooling app. It takes your web app and converts it into what we expect in Teams to get the app the rest of the way through the app lifecycle. So I have App Studio open. You'll see there's a couple of different functions in the app. The one we're most interested in is the manifest editor. So this is where you would come to create a new app. So if you've coded your app as a web app, say in C# or Node.js or whatever technology you're using, and you want to bundle it into a Teams app, this is where you'll come to start. I actually have a couple of created apps already here. So I'm going to open one that we made recently. This one is a Contoso company app. So this is obviously a line of business process we're talking about here. And in this is where you'll define all of the metadata that you need to represent this app inside of Teams, as well as which capabilities this app is capable of doing. But where we come in with App Lifecycle is really the end of this workflow, which is how to test and distribute this app. So you have a few options here available to you. Number one, you can install this app directly for yourself for testing. Number two, you can download this app. This is that packaging part of the process for distribution inside your organization. So this is for line of business apps. And number three, you can submit your app to the Teams App Store for approval. This last process is really for what we call third-party apps, or our ISVs, to go out and use Partner Center to track their submission process into the global available app store that Microsoft showcases. I think it's most relevant in this case to talk about how we package apps for line of business purposes to go through the rest of this app lifecycle. So I would choose the download function. And all this does is it recognizes which app you've just packaged and it downloads it to your download folder. It's as easy as that. And how that's represented in your download folder is a zip file of the app. That zip file is what Teams needs to recognize it's a Teams app. It has our manifest, which has all the metadata that I just talked about, as well as any resource icons, like the icon for the app, small and large, so on and so forth. So that's really what we consider the tools for developing, testing, and packaging the app for production submission. At this point, it'll be up to the developer to get the app from the hands of the developer into the hands of the IT decision maker. So now you've packaged your app, you have this thing that's ready to ingest into the organization's app store. How do we start as the IT decision maker? How do we start to validate what that app can do so that we trust it enough to roll it out into full production? And a primary mechanism for validation today is a concept we call sideloading. So as an IT decision maker, you're sitting there with that zip file that was just exported and passed to you by the developer. If you need to test this app out for yourself, but you don't want to put it fully into the production environment for rollout for others to use, this is where you use sideloading. And to show you how to configure sideloading, I'm going to open up what we call the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. And I'm going to open up something called a setup policy. Rajesh is going to talk about more about what setup policies are capable of doing when he goes. But there's one specific setting in setup policy that turns on sideloading. And let me show you what that looks like. So I have created a setup policy called Trusted Approvers. This has a function called Upload Custom Apps. Now, by default, this is off for every user in an organization. So what we recommend is turning this toggle on only for users that you trust to be able to sideload apps for themselves. So what we mean when we say sideloading is effectively the ability to directly install an app into a given team or into a given context without the app actually existing in the full tenant app catalog or in the production environment. So for that reason, there's not a lot of insight into which apps are actually installed in this manner or sideloaded. And that's why we restrict it so that by default, no users are able to do this function. But to accomplish this validation step, your trusted approvers should have this on. So you'd come in here, it's toggled off by default, you'd toggle it on, and you'd actually target this just towards users that you trust. So in this case, we've targeted this policy just to me, the admin account. So we have an account called admin at. And what I see as the admin account, if I come into the Teams client, so now I'm switching out of the admin console and into the client. If I want to sideload this app to a test team to actually try the thing out, I start by doing that in the App Store itself. So this is the store where users come to discover apps and kick off their usage. But at the bottom of this, if I have sideloading enabled, I can actually see this function that says upload a custom app. Again, if you don't have that toggle turned on, all standard users won't be able to do this workflow. That's what was important about turning that toggle on. When I click this, because I'm an admin, I actually have two options. One is to upload for Contoso. This is the tenant app store, and I'm going to get to that in the next step. But the first one is that sideloading step. That's upload for me or my teams. When I click on that, now I can choose the app that I had just exported for sideloading usage. So I'm going to choose the company app. So this is what we saw in App Studio. When I downloaded it, this is the binary that came out. And one key part of a validation step is to see what that app can do. So here, I'll highlight it in the computer. This shows what this app has permissions to read and use for it to function. And it's also going to show the types of capabilities that this app has. So the one that we developed in this sample just has a bot, and it shows that here. If the app had a tab, a message extension, and so on, that would come up in this context. But because I'm able to sideload, I'm not finding this in the store. It's not in the catalog. I'm just directly installing it. So I could choose add, but I want to choose to add it to a specific team because that's my test team. So when I click add team, I'm going to search here. How about the Mark 8 project team? That sounds good to me. And I'll say set up a bot. So that's what sideloading looks like. I'm finishing the installation process now, which will install the app to the Mark 8 project team. And you can see my bot already sent a helpful card to get me started. And so if I go into the project team, I can go to manage team, and I can see the apps installed there. And here's that Contoso company app directly installed. And that's what sideloading looks like. From here, you can interact with the app. So because I installed it, I have it here in the app bar, and I can see the app chat with the bot that I created and go from there, directly installed. And that's our validation step. So we talked about, as a developer, how to package an app, how to get that app into production, to get that app into the hands of IT. And now as an IT decision maker, how to do validation via sideloading. Once you do that validation, if the app looks and behaves as expected, has only the permissions you trust and the capabilities that you expect, now an IT pro actually has to operationally upload that app to the organization's tenant app store into production for all users to use. And so that's this next step as an IT pro, uploading, approving, and viewing apps. So our mechanism to do this, I just showed sideloading. That's that direct installation, and only the trusted user can do it. What we recommend, and I'm going to go back here to the Teams Admin Center. And this step specifically is for line of business apps. All of our third-party apps and apps that exist in the global app store are already in our app catalog. But if you have a line of business app that you need to get into your tenant app catalog, you'll have to go through an upload step here. So this is an experience that shows all apps available in Teams. It shows their state, whether they're currently allowed at a tenant level, whether they're a custom app, a line of business app, and then who published them, and so forth, so on and so forth. And right at the top here, I can choose upload a new app. So unlike sideloading, this is actually going to put the app in the production environment. So I'll click on this, make sure that I'm doing this correctly, and I'll click select file, and then I can upload my app here. I'm actually going to cancel out of this because I've already uploaded that app in preparation for this demo. And so I'll search for it here. And here it is. So this, after you upload the app, it appears in this tenant app catalog list. And when I click on that, this is a representation to the admin of what that app looks like. If for some reason I need to turn that app off after I upload it, maybe there's a bug, a security vulnerability or something, there's one easy toggle here to change the state from allowed to blocked. If you change it to blocked, users aren't going to be able to discover or use this app any longer. This is also the place where you'll come to update the app over time. If I click update, it's the same experience. I'd select the updated file and replace the app here. I'm not going to do that in this case. And you can delete the app entirely from the catalog in this example. This is also a place where you can discover what capabilities the app has. So I can see here that the app is a bot that runs in the personal, team, or group chat context. I can see the app ID. If it's a third-party app, so let's choose one of those. This line of business app doesn't have a lot of publisher information. So let's choose Adobe Sign. We can see that that app has categories that are present to the end user. You can see a description of it, and you can actually see this step of certification, which demonstrates whether this app was Microsoft 365 certified or not. And if you need more information, we can link out to it, to the documentation right from here. So moving on, we've now, again, taken the app as a developer, we've packaged it, we've validated it using sideloading, and we've uploaded the app into the store. At this point in the lifecycle, the app is available for everybody to use. It's not configured at all. It's not set up to appear for end users in any particular way. However, we haven't configured how that app appears for end users, and we haven't restricted who can use the app using permission policy at all. So to talk about that and to go to the next step of the app lifecycle, I'm going to pass the baton to Rajesh.
Thank you so much, Joey. My name is Rajesh, like I introduced myself earlier. And when you think about apps in general, it's the line of business application in addition to third-party applications as well. And we must give admins the ability to govern these apps so that they can tailor the experience for different sets of users within their tenant. And that is a very, very critical step in the app lifecycle. So let me quickly walk over what that actually means and what it represents. Let me kind of take over from where Joey left off the last time when we were in setup policies. Under trusted approvers, what Joey spoke about was sideloading. But setup policy is way more than just allowing certain users to sideload apps. It has other controls like allowing users to pin apps. Pinning is the act of pinning an app on the app bar on the left rail. That's what we call it. We call it the app bar. In addition to allowing users to pin the app, we also allow admins to pre-pin apps on behalf of the user. A great example is frontline workers who want to use shifts. If they want to use shifts and if they're going to repeatedly use it for their day-to-day productivity, an admin can pin it for them so that when they launch the Teams client, they can start using it right then and there on the app bar. However, the default setup policy for every single user in the tenant is actually the global default policy. Inside the global default policy, sideloading, which is upload custom apps, is going to be turned off. And this is because we need to trust those users, those developers who are building apps, and only they get the ability to sideload, not any user in the tenant. So, in this particular case, I can leave the global policy as is and start building custom policies for targeted users. If you go back to the setup policy page, I have created a policy called analysts. Inside analysts, I'm still leaving the custom apps turned off, that is the ability to sideload. But for analysts, as an IT admin, I've determined that the LOB app that my colleague Joey just uploaded, and Smartsheet are essential for productivity, and I have pinned it for them. And once I have created this policy, it doesn't mean that I've applied it to any user. So which is when I can go to users and apply it to either a handful of users, a single user, or a group of users. A common question here is, can we automate this? Absolutely. There is a PowerShell commandlet where you can create a script and apply the new setup policy for groups of users. In this particular case, I've applied the new analyst policy to Alan. And let's go and see Alan's client experience. In here, as we spoke, I've pinned Contoso, the LOB app that Joey uploaded, and Smartsheet. This way, when Alan launches the Teams client, he's ready to be productive. In addition to setup policies, we also have another category of policy, which is what we call as permission policies. So if you see my screen, I've navigated to permission policies. Permission policy is giving user level settings. What does that even mean? It's giving users the ability to use certain apps or not use a certain set of apps. By default, every single user in your tenant gets the global default permission policy. Under this policy, we allow all apps for the user: third-party apps, Microsoft apps, and tenant apps. Microsoft apps are the Power BIs and the Excel and the PowerPoint. Third-party apps are Smartsheet and SurveyMonkey and Poly, for example. And tenant apps are those custom apps that the IT admin has uploaded for the entire tenant. For example, the Contoso app that my colleague uploaded. By default, we allow all apps for all users except for GCC. In GCC, we curtail the use of third-party apps because of compliance reasons. And I encourage you all to check the GCC documentation for more questions. Once you move out back to the main page, you can again create custom policies. And for example, I have created a custom policy for the same analyst persona. Now, as an IT admin, I can determine that analysts need to be productive, and maybe I don't want them to use an app like YouTube, which is exactly what I've done here. I have multiple options under each category, which is allow all apps, block all apps, allow specific apps, and block specific apps. I have chosen to block a specific app, which is YouTube. Like I mentioned during setup policies, creating a policy doesn't mean that we've applied it to any single user. So in this case, let me go back to the same analyst persona, which in this case is Alan, and actually apply it to this persona. Ahead of this demo, I went and actually applied this policy. But for those who are doing it the first time, the way to navigate to this page is by going to the user of interest and going to the policies page and clicking on the edit option. In here, you'll see different categories for different policies. And we are interested in permission policy and setup policy. Earlier, I spoke about setup policies, which is why you see the analyst policy applied here. And in permission policies, I've already applied the analyst policy, which is blocking YouTube. Now, when I go to Alan's App Store and search for YouTube, Alan will not be able to find YouTube. The common question is, what if Alan previously installed YouTube? It's as straightforward as it can get. YouTube will not be available going forward for this user. In this case, we are talking about Alan. In addition to permission policies, there's also something what we call as org-wide settings, and that rests under the Manage Apps category. We spoke about permission policies at the user level, but there are policies that an admin can set at the tenant level. For example, when we open the org-wide app settings, a tenant admin can choose to completely block all third-party apps by using this toggle in here. Now, you may wonder, the permission policy that we saw in the previous page allows all apps by default. But the third-party apps here is going to be turned off. That means the tenant-wide setting is going to win over the global default permission policies. So if I save this option, although the permission policies allow for all apps for end users in the tenant will still be blocked because of this setting. I again encourage you to read the documentation to see what the behavior is like for different combinations between org-wide app settings and permission policies. So that encompasses all of policies. So to recap, we spoke about setup policies, which is essentially tailoring the end user experience, the end user client experience by either pinning apps for them, giving them the ability to sideload, and giving them the ability to pin apps as they go and install new apps. The other category that we spoke about was permission policies, where we can selectively block apps for certain sets of users and persona within the tenant. And finally, we spoke about the org-wide app settings, where admins can set tenant-level policies than just setting policies at the user level. Now that we've spoken about governance, we can just quickly take a look at what the client-side experience is like for any user that has access to apps. So going back to the Teams client experience, on the app bar, there is the app overflow. And as part of the app overflow experience, we also have a search experience. And this is specifically meant for users who know exactly the app that they're looking for and can just enter in the name and get the app from the store directly. For those who actually want to browse based on categories of apps, they can always visit the App Store. As part of this experience, we have something called as Built for Contoso. This is specifically for line of business applications or tenant apps that the admin has uploaded for all users in the tenant. And in this case, we will be seeing Joey's app, which is a Contoso company app. It's in a separate category and it's meant for members of that organization. Only they get to see this app as long as their permission policies allow them to view this app. With that, we wrap App Lifecycle.
Yeah. So just to recap everything we came here, Rajesh just talked about how users discover and use apps, but we came all the way back from, as a developer, the tools you need, which is App Studio, to finish your development of your app and package it as a Teams app. As an IT decision maker, validation using sideloading and that special toggle within setup policies. IT pros tools for uploading and viewing the app catalog, whether that's first-party Microsoft apps, third-party apps, or custom line of business apps that are uploaded in that same app catalog experience. Then Rajesh talked about all of the set of tools at the organization level, user level for configuration, management, setup, and permission restrictions. And then finally, at the output of all of that, users can discover apps through search or browsing in the store. So hopefully that clears up a lot of concepts around what the Teams App Lifecycle is. We encourage you to get started, start developing your own Teams apps, and reach out if you have any questions. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the virtual instructor-led training on building Microsoft Teams apps and solutions.